Hello, my friend. Group C is here with most important topics that impacts our life, corporate life, impacts the way we see ourselves, impacts the way we see the world, impacts the way we achieve the goal. Yes, my friend, we're talking about most important topic, emotional intelligence or intelligence, EI. Look at the slides. Motivation, empathy, self-regulation, self-awareness, social skills. That's a part of EI. I'm going to take you to history of the EI. It goes back to 384 BC. Aristotle talked about how much anger, how you should use anger or emotions, amount of emotion you should use to achieve your goal. 1963. Remember the big rally, Dr. King? 253,000 people came there with no invite. You know why? Because they were inspired by Dr. King's leadership. They believed in what he believed in. They believed in his dream. They made his dream their own dream. And looking back at our literatures review that we did as a group, Keller and Brodsky, from manager to a transformed leader, biggest factor was EI. Now we're going to go back and see the official definitions of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is defined as the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, as well as recognize and influence the emotions of those around you.
It's important to recognize that emotional intelligence is not monolithic or binary. There isn't a single dimension that can accurately define an individual's emotional intelligence. A recognized way, as popularized by Daniel Goleman, the same professor who Raj mentioned, and who popularized the term emotional intelligence, considers EI through 4 domains: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, and expanding that further through 12 competencies, which we've highlighted below, which are actually nested within the 4 domains. Keep in mind that these are in individual context, and you'll be hearing about team.
Our organizational example centers around Indra Nooyi, the CEO of PepsiCo from 2006 to 2018. In our first video clip, she's going to discuss a little bit about the difference between emotional intelligence, EQ, and IQ. In the second video clip, she's going to give a great example about how she used emotional intelligence herself to connect with her executives.
I think the CEO of today not only has to have leadership skills and an IQ, there's got to be a healthy dose of EQ, the emotional side. Because millennials today, young people today, want to come to work for a company that cares about them. They want to feel connected to the company. And I think it's critically important that we humanize the CEO. The CEO cannot be this imperialist that's sitting there. We've got to humanize the CEO. We have to remove the barriers between the CEO and the front line. And that requires a new skill too. So I don't want to say it's me, but I think a lot of women CEOs actually can do pretty well in today's environment, because by nature we humanize ourselves a lot more, because that's the way we've been brought up. And we listen a lot more, I think. We stop and ask for directions. There's so much we do. And I think that today's world, there's a new breed of CEOs have come up, men and women, who are doing a very, very nice job. But all of them, I think, are a new breed that's learning that the world is completely different and recognizing that EQ is as important as IQ. That's what I'm trying to focus on as much as I can. Occasionally, I'll write very personal letters to the employee base as a whole. For example, when my kids were going to college, I wrote a personal letter to everybody saying I'm going through tremendous separation angst. Or if I felt our employees were not calling their parents often enough, I'd write a letter about why it's important they call their parents. So whatever's on my mind on a personal basis, I want them to know me as a person rather than just an executive. So I'm very accessible to them, and I talk to everybody from the front line to my senior executives.
A number of years ago, you spoke at the Economic Club of Washington, and you made a speech that I thought really captured a lot of people's attention. And one of the things you said was that you write letters to your senior officers' mothers to kind of give them a report card on how their children are doing. Do you still do that, and what was the theory behind that?
So I have to take you back a few years. When I first became CEO, I went back to India to visit my mother, who was in India at that time. My father had passed away, and my mother was there. And I stayed at a hotel because, you know, the home was a little bit more rugged, and I wanted the comforts. So she told me I had to dress up and show up at home at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I wondered why. But, you know, when mom gives you instructions, you just follow it. When I got home and I sat in the living room, stream of visitors and random people started to show up. They'd say hello to me and then go to my mom and say, you did such a good job with your daughter. You know, compliments to you, she's CEO, but not a word to me. And when I watched this interplay going on, I realized that I was a product of my upbringing. And my parents, if my father had been around too, they should get the credit, because it's what they did for me and to me that allowed me to be who I was that day. And it occurred to me that I'd never thanked the parents of my executives for the gift of their child to PepsiCo. So I came back and I started to write to my direct reports and, you know, other senior executives, narrating the story, my cultural background, what happened when I went to India. And then I wrote a personal paragraph on what their child was doing at PepsiCo and said, hey, thank you for the gift of your child to our company. And it opened a floodgate of emotions. Parents just started to communicate directly with me, and it's been an amazing experience because I now write to about 400 executives.
So you write a letter to their parents. What do the executives say? They say, don't do that? Or they say, I'm glad you told my mother how well I'm doing, or my father?
So our executives actually get very emotional about it because their parents have never received such a letter, and their parents are now getting a letter, which is always a positive report card, right? I'm not going to write anything else. So their parents are so delighted about receiving this letter. They tell their neighbors and their uncles and their aunts. And then the executive says, my God, this is the best thing that happened to my parents and the best thing that happened to me. So the executive feels proud.
You just heard Indra Nooyi. Performance with purpose was her mantra. Marrying financial success with social responsibility. She was a big proponent of EI. And if you look at balancing the emotions, it's all about knowing yourself, to evaluating yourself in the group, having a discipline for yourself, to following group norms, being a caring individual, to creating affirmative environment, a perspective taking to feedback, not just feedback with empathy. I'll take you to my classroom 10 years ago, my friend. I was teaching math. First few weeks, I didn't teach any math. What did I do? I set the structure. I built the rapport together as a team. We set the norms. I want to make sure they have ownership in it. And end of the day, we did celebrate small or big, any success we had. This could be applied anywhere.
We know that emotional intelligence promotes productivity. How do we create awareness? Creating norms that build trust, a sense of group identity, and group efficacy will develop emotional intelligence. These norms could include many different situations, but the main premise is that they consider all group members' perspectives. Indra Nooyi demonstrated her awareness through her continuous and open communication with her entire organization. How do we create regulation of emotions? By supporting our members through team building and proper conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is inevitable. Avoiding conflict resolution can deteriorate the team in reducing their trust.
We just heard about a great example of emotional intelligence from Indra Nooyi, CEO at PepsiCo. Some really great examples she shared. Now let's take a look at emotional intelligence as it relates to its impact on leaders in the top left-hand side. The bottom left-hand side, you see the effect of emotional intelligence on individuals On the top right-hand side, you see the impact of emotional intelligence on groups, and the bottom right-hand side, its impact on organizations. If we start with leaders on the top left-hand side, you see that those leaders that demonstrate emotional intelligence, compared to those that don't, reflect improved performance as a leader. They also reflect an ability to address problems with more flexibility, and they also improve performance of their direct reports. On the bottom left, you see the impact among individuals compared to those that are not demonstrating emotional intelligence. And those that do, compared to those that don't, are more focused on outcomes, they're more open to solutions, they get along better with people, and they relate better to people, and they embrace change. Top right hand, you see emotional intelligence and its impact on groups. To me, this is the most profound impact. You see that groups that demonstrate emotional intelligence, there's a high level of trust, there's better collaboration, more participation, and as a result, you see better decisions, more creative solutions, and higher productivity. With respect to organizations, the evidence is clear. Organizations where emotional intelligence is demonstrated have improved profits compared to those that are not demonstrating emotional intelligence. They have improved engagement and they've reduced turnover. I think most interesting is the relationship between emotional intelligence and individuals who demonstrate the behavior known as organizational citizenship behavior, a coveted behavior among individuals. A high-level way to describe this is individuals who demonstrate OCB are more willing to take on initiatives without being asked. They go the extra mile without being asked, and they're not looking to get rewarded for it. They do it because they feel it's the right thing to do. I would encourage you to learn more about OCB. There's a lot more to understand about this coveted behavior. As we think about emotional intelligence, it's important to think about it from a couple of perspectives. I'd offer, think about it with regard to the word value. It's of value to demonstrate emotional intelligence, as I just offered, as a leader. It's valued by those being led, again, as I just shared. And of course, it's valuable to the organization. Importantly, it's learnable. You can learn EQ.